Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2024 release Arcadian, and this is a Nicolas Cage film. Although he's not the biggest part of this film, he is still in it, so if you're a Nick Cage fan, maybe you want to check this one out. When I watched this, I did not know this was going to end up being a Shudder release until I rented it through Fandango at home, which, by the way, it was $7.41 with tax to rent it, so not too bad. Once I rented it, and then I started playing the movie, and it says Shudder as one of the cards in the beginning, and I was like, oh man, I could have got this as a screener. I didn't know it was coming. That's the problem with Shudder not releasing their information on all the films that they're getting necessarily, or maybe that's one I just missed. So this review will probably already be up on my channel before it's going to hit Shudder, so just know it's going to be on Shudder if you want to wait to watch it for free if you have Shudder. I'm assuming maybe it'll be June or July when it ends up hitting of 2024, but not 100% sure because I don't know yet. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about Arcadian. This one's directed by Benjamin Brewer, who did Beneath Contempt and The Trust, and it's also written by Mike Nillen, who did Braven. Have not seen any of those films. Quick synopsis of the film. I'm just going to say it right now. It is a ripoff of A Quiet Place. Unfortunately, I don't really recommend this film because it literally, like, if you want to watch a film like this, just watch A Quiet Place. And if you want another movie that's just like A Quiet Place, I guess you can watch this. It's not nearly as good as A Quiet Place because that one's actually a pretty good film. This is a pretty lackluster ripoff, unfortunately. There's not a whole lot great to it, although I will say the acting is quite good. I think the actors did as much as they could with what they were given. This film has a bad script, unfortunately. It's not necessarily like a terrible script, it's just very blah. It's just a run-of-the-mill movie. It kind of seems like the guy who wrote it was just like, oh, I got to write a script. I just watched A Quiet Place recently. I'm just going to rip that off. I don't really have time to come up with my own ideas here. Let's just do this. So that kind of sucks. But synopsis version, I mean, it's like A Quiet Place. It's basically post-apocalyptic. A man and his two sons who are surviving in this post-apocalyptic world. There are creatures out there that are coming out at night, so they kind of have to board everything up at night and be very careful about things. Is this sounding like A Quiet Place? Yes, it's very much like A Quiet Place. Rest assured, the creature design is very different, so I'll talk about that a little bit later here, but I don't really recommend this movie, unfortunately. But I always do say as well, every film is worth watching at least once, just to figure out how you personally feel about it. I'm sure there are people who will watch this and enjoy it. This is just my personal opinion of it. So for when I say I don't recommend this film, that's for people who typically have found out that their interests in films really line up with mine a lot. Otherwise, give it a shot. Figure it out. Especially if you have Shudder and it's just on Shudder and you have some time. It won't cost you anything. So anyway, the opening sequence sets up a lonely post-apocalyptic world with some backstory for the main characters. Granted, not a whole lot of backstory. It is a really good opening scene to kind of establish what the world is, what the rules are of this world, basically, and who your main characters are going to be and what their bond is, and a little bit of their backstory. Unfortunately, past that, they don't delve that much into these characters. They kind of go forward in time, and then they're kind of like, okay, this is what their relationships are right now. They don't give a whole lot of backstory. It's just ends up being like, these are some random people that you're not going to learn a whole lot about who are living in this situation. They needed, and this is going back to that not great writing situation for the script, you needed more depth of character. There isn't a whole lot of character development that goes on. There's not a whole lot of character that goes on. Almost every single character is just paper thin, and there needed to be a lot more depth because that creates more interest. Because if you're going to do a ripoff of another film that's pretty popular and a lot of people have seen, you're going to need to have good characters. You're going to need to have your own unique twist on things. And this film just doesn't have that. Again, the actors, I think, did what they could. They do a good job. But the problem is the characters were not there. The dialogue is not there. The story is not there, unfortunately. The shaky camera work in this film also is awful. There's a thing called a tripod. I talk about this all the time. I don't understand why horror filmmakers in particular nowadays, low budget horror filmmakers, think that they can just freestyle all the camera work. This is not a found footage film. Don't make it look like it. The shaky camera work in found footage films, there's a reason for that. There's no reason for it in a film like this. It is unacceptable and it is nauseating at times. And it's literally like instances where characters are just talking to each other and it's just so unstable. It's unacceptable. We should not be doing this. Filmmakers, take note. That was terrible. Early on, it has a strong Walking Dead feel, but then becomes very clear this is a Quiet Place ripoff. There's a lot of focus on daily life in the world, which is very common for these types of films. You know, The Walking Dead showing daily life post-apocalypse, A Quiet Place showing that, a lot of these types of films, which is a good way to kind of settle people into that world and give them a feel of what these characters really are going through and also how much the world has changed from what you as the viewer know it to be versus what this post-apocalyptic version is. So that was good. There's some pretty bad CGI in this, unfortunately. It's not a lot. Fortunately, the bad CGI is not a lot, but it's there. I always have to point it out because I think CGI is just terrible. I understand why it ends up getting used because it's a lot cheaper than doing practical, but it just doesn't look great. The score is nice. I did quite like the score for this film. I think it had a lot of good emotional elements to the composition of it, and that really does help out certain scenes of the film as much as it can. The writing is weak, especially the dialogue. The dialogue a lot of times actually feels like it's just in there to waste time. There are actually a bunch of scenes that feel like they're just in there to waste time. Although honestly, I will say the pacing isn't terrible with this movie. And that is kind of surprising for how not great the script is. I think that pacing-wise, the person who wrote the script has a pretty good grasp on what they can do as far as pacing. They just need to figure out how to create more interesting characters and a better overall idea. An original idea. They need to create an original idea. Characters are paper thin, and they do things that don't make sense just for convenience of moving the story along. That is something that really irks me, because everyone watches these films, and if something seems off for who the character is or what the situation is, and it seems like they're just doing things that have no logic rooted in that moment or in that person's brain, it takes you out of the film, and you're just like, this doesn't seem right. And there are, I wouldn't say a ton of those moments in this film, but there are enough of those moments in this film that you're just going to be like, shaking your head. You're like, nope, they would never do that. This is for writing out of convenience, just to move the story along. And that's lazy. The creature designs are odd. I guess some people could end up finding them interesting. I mean, they are interesting in a way, but they're odd, and I didn't like them. I will say that. Like, the creatures in A Quiet Place looked very interesting. I thought they were very well designed. These, they just look weird, and I don't really understand what they were derived from. I don't understand how they came up with this and looked at it and were like, yeah, let's do that. They also feel a bit confused. It looks like they maybe had a few points of reference that they wanted to go for, but then mashed it together and were just like, nah, we don't have time to figure out how this will look better. Let's just use this. It's weird. And there's also something that these creatures do specifically that is just seems like a really random thing to do, and it adds nothing to the movie at all. It's just a little bit annoying. There's something a character does in the end that is very stupid. I do understand what they were trying to go for when they were doing that, but it does not end up working because, yet again, it's another one of those moments of this character would not do that in this situation. There was no need for the character to do what they did. It was another writing out of convenience thing because they were trying to create a certain type of scene and it doesn't work because it's not believable that this character would do it. It also just seems like a very stupid decision. There's a kind of gag moment that they do at the end of the film that I think they thought, like, let's put this in, this will be cool, but it ends up coming off as just kind of over the top and stupid, in my opinion. I'm not going to reference something, because if people want to watch it, I'm not going to reference what it kind of reminded me of, but didn't work in that way. But you'll know what I mean at the end. Like, it seems like it was supposed to be this, like, cool gag. It's a stupid gag. And again, Actors did what they could. There is an element of this film that I did like. There is this interesting dynamic of kind of like older generations versus younger generations, and kind of like the butting heads of older and younger generations. And it's like their outlook on life, how they think the world should be navigated, that type of stuff. Which that stuff, if they would have focused even more on that and done a better job of kind of fleshing that out, this film could have been a lot more interesting. But I do like the fact that it was in there to some degree. It's something that's always, I was going to say present, but it's topical, because there's always in the world this struggle between older generations and younger generations, because they have different viewpoints, they have different ideas of how they want things to be in the world. So it makes sense. But anyway, out of 5 stars, half stars, and play, I'm going to give this a 2-star rating. It's not the worst film I've ever seen, but it wasn't that great either, unfortunately. But yeah, this is where I'd love to hear from you. Tell me if you liked it, hated it, in between, and put some comments down there. We can talk about it. I'm especially interested in differing opinions, because I'm always open to listening to that. Because, maybe there's something I missed. Maybe there's something that if you say it played off like this to me, and this is why. I might be like, oh, I could kind of see that. Do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Hit the thumbs up on this video and all videos for me if you want to help me with the YouTube algorithm. And hit the notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos. Regardless, thanks for watching this video, and until next time, keep it brutal.